The strange thing about long marriages is that you start believing nothing can truly surprise you anymore. You've been through enough years together that you think you understand the other person completely, their habits, their moods, even their silence. That's what I believed about my wife. Until one quiet Tuesday evening when she looked at me across the kitchen table and said something I never expected to hear. "I think I need a divorce." For a few seconds, I honestly thought she was joking. But she wasn't smiling. "My name is Daniel. I'm 46 years old, and until that night, I thought my marriage of 18 years was stable. Not perfect, but stable." My wife Laura and I had built a life the way many couples do. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood, raised two kids who were now nearly adults, and created routines that felt familiar and comfortable. After nearly 2 decades together, life wasn't dramatic anymore. It was predictable. But predictable doesn't mean unhappy. At least I didn't think it did. Laura had been quieter than usual for a few weeks before that conversation happened. She seemed distracted sometimes, lost in thought while staring at her phone. I noticed it. But like many husbands who have been married a long time, I assumed it was just stress from work. That assumption turned out to be a mistake. The night everything changed started like any other evening. Dinner, dishes, the usual quiet moment when the house finally calms down. Laura sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee mug she wasn't drinking. Finally, she spoke. "There's something I need to tell you." Her voice sounded different. "Careful." I waited. Then she said the sentence that made the room feel suddenly smaller. "I've been thinking about my past lately." That alone wasn't strange. But the next sentence was, "I've been talking to Ryan." Ryan. The name felt familiar immediately. Ryan was Laura's ex-boyfriend from before we met. She had mentioned him a few times over the years, but he had always sounded like someone firmly placed in the past. "Talking to him how?" I asked. "Messages, phone calls sometimes." I leaned back slightly. "How long?" Laura hesitated. "A couple months." That answer sat between us like a heavy weight. 2 months. 2 months of conversations I knew nothing about. "What exactly are you talking about with him?" I asked calmly. Laura looked down at the table. "Old memories, life, things like that." I studied her face carefully. Then she said something that made the situation very clear. "He moved back into town." Suddenly, the pieces started fitting together. Late phone notifications. The distant look on her face sometimes. The way she seemed somewhere else even while sitting in the same room as me. "How many times have you seen him?" I asked. Laura didn't answer right away. "3, she said quietly. That number hit harder than I expected. 3 meetings. 3 times she had chosen to see him without telling me. I remained calm. Anger wasn't going to help anything in that moment. "What happened during those meetings?" I asked. Laura looked at me with a mixture of guilt and confusion. "We talked. That's all." "Yes." But then she added something that finally revealed the real reason for this conversation. "He asked me if I was happy." That question felt strangely personal. "And what did you tell him?" I asked. Laura took a slow breath. "I said I didn't know." For the first time that evening, I felt something inside my chest tighten. 18 years together. And suddenly, she didn't know if she was happy. Then Laura said the sentence that changed everything. "I think I'm still in love with him." The words hung in the air. Simple, direct, devastating. But here's the thing people often misunderstand about moments like that. Exploding with anger might feel satisfying, but it rarely solves anything. So I stayed calm. "How long have you felt that way?" I asked. Laura shook her head slightly. "I don't know, seeing him again brought back a lot of feelings." "Old feelings," I said. "Yes." I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question that really mattered. "So what are you planning to do about those feelings?" Laura finally looked me directly in the eyes. "I think I need to figure out what they mean." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" I asked. Her answer came quietly. "I think we should get a divorce." That was the moment the reality of the situation settled in. My wife wasn't confused. She had already made a decision. She just needed me to accept it. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Laura said something else. I didn't want to hurt you. I gave a small, tired smile. That's an interesting way to start a divorce conversation. Laura looked away. I just need to know if what I felt for him was real. I leaned forward slightly. Laura, I said calmly, you're asking me to step aside so you can test your feelings for another man. She didn't respond, because there was nothing she could say to make that sentence sound better. Then something inside me shifted. Not anger, clarity. I stood up from the table. Laura looked confused. You're not even going to argue, she asked. I shook my head. No. Why not? Because you've already made your choice. She frowned. I'm just trying to understand my feelings. No, I replied quietly. You're trying to replace your husband with someone you used to date. That sentence finally made her uncomfortable. Daniel, that's not fair. It's accurate. I walked toward the living room and grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? She asked. For a walk. You're just leaving the conversation. No, I said. I'm ending it. Laura stared at me. You're not even going to fight for our marriage. I turned back toward her. I spent 18 years fighting for this marriage, I said calmly. But marriage only works when both people choose each other. The room went quiet again. Finally, Laura asked one last question. So what happens now? I looked at her for a moment. Then I answered honestly. You'll get your divorce. She blinked. You're agreeing? Yes. Because here's something people rarely talk about. Respect matters more than history, more than memories, more than time invested. And the moment someone asks you to step aside so they can chase another relationship, the marriage has already changed. Laura looked shocked by how calmly I accepted her decision. But the truth was simple. If she believed her future might be with someone else, then my future needed to be somewhere else too. She chose to follow her past, and I chose to walk toward a life where I wasn't someone's second option. That night, my wife confessed she still loved her ex and asked me for a divorce. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't try to convince her to stay. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do in a relationship is simply refuse to compete for a place you already earned years ago.